for getting these kind of axioms that let you generate these SP pairings. Yeah, that's what talk about reference does. It lets you generate these SP pairings for your language. And this is where Davidson's instrumentalism comes in. Davidson's idea was we've got to give up the concept of reference as basic to an empirical theory of language. These notions, like these notions, he means notions like the reference of a name or what it takes for a sign to apply to an object. These notions we must treat as theoretical constructs whose function is exhausted in stating the truth conditions for sentences. So what you need is you need some finite axioms up here, and then you're going to use them to generate all your SP pairings. But that's the only point of talk about reference. Its only role is to let you derive those SP pairings. And once they've done that, their job is done. They are just gas. They are just convenient theoreticians' devices, just gadgets to let you crank out the SP pairings. Their function is exhausted in stating the truth conditions for sentences. So when Frege and Russell and Kripke and Searle and so on were talking about, well, what does it take for the name to be hooked up to the object? That was a bad question. That's treating reference as if it's got a life of its own outside the context of these axioms. But the only point of the notion of reference is to let you generate these SP pairings. Once it's done that, its work is done, and there is nothing more to be said about what reference is really. Okay, so the meaning theory doesn't give any empirical content directly to relations between names or predicates and objects. That's just a big mistake in theory of meaning to look for that. These relations between names or predicates and bits of the world, they're only given a content indirectly. When these sentences, these SP pairings, they mean something. I mean, they have empirical significance. They have some friction in what. I mean, suppose you're taking a theory for the signs of French that is telling you what all the words refer to and so on. The only way you test that theory is by saying, does it get the truth conditions of the French sentences right? There's no question what do the words really refer to. The empirical constraints on when a theory meaning is correct are the constraints on when a pairing S is true if and only if P is correct. And what it takes for this to be true is that P should be a translation of the sentence with S names. Right? That's where we began. And these are, so the empirical constraints are, have I got it right what the translation in the meta language is of this sentence S of the object language? These are constraints in translation that operate at the level of whole sentences. And the basic constraint, empirical constraint on meaning, Davison says, is charity. You interpret the other as holding true sentences that you also hold true. So if you're standing beside the indigenous speaker of the language and a rabbit bolts across the horizon and the native speaker says, "Gavagai," then since in that context you would think it's right to say, "That's a rabbit," you take it that the indigenous speaker is saying something you can translate as, "That's a rabbit." You don't suppose that the native speaker is saying, "Look, here's my Aunt Cecilia," if you see what I mean, when it's plainly not your Aunt Cecilia, or his Aunt Cecilia, or her Aunt Cecilia. Sorry, I didn't do that very well. If you're interpreting speakers of a foreign language, you try to interpret them so that what they say comes out true, by and large. So that when you say, their sentence is true just in this case, and if they think it's true, it should be something that you think is true. If it's something that you think is manifestly false, you shouldn't interpret them in such a way that they come out holding it true. You see what I mean? You assume that the people you're trying to translate are kind of reasonable. That's incompetent. That's charity. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's very good. There's a lot of mileage for that example in this context. Yeah. But notice that in that context, what Marco Polo is trying to do is to interpret the native speakers as saying things that are right. He's saying, what's it called? And they're saying it's called Madagascar. That was Madagascar. And he's assuming that they are not making some stupid mistake, right? And pointing to something else. He's assuming that they're right. Yeah. And so Marco Polo is actually trying to conform to this maxim. Yeah. And the fact that he hasn't succeeded in conforming to the maxim will come out when you consider the other remarks the native speakers make. Marco Polo obviously did not do his homework on this, but the other native speakers would presumably have said things like, Madagascar, I mean, only they'd have done this in Swahili or whatever, but they'd have said things like, Madagascar is not an island, Madagascar is part of the mainland. Yeah, Madagascar you can get to without using a boat. You see what I mean? So that if you're going to interpret all the sentences they hold true of Madagascar, he wouldn't have wanted to interpret them as referring to the island, but making a bunch of stupid mistakes. Yeah, namely thinking he was part of the mainland and so on. He would have said, I've got to revise this idea that when they say Madagascar, they're referring to the island, because that makes them come out false. You see what I mean? Yeah. Okay, so in translating, you just do try to meet this constraint, but that constraint applies only at the level of whole sentences. You're trying to get the sentences that this other speaker makes come out true. So on this view, if you get two theories that are giving you the same SP pairings, so you get the same SP pairings being cranked out, but maybe different sets of gadgets up in the axioms, yeah, then there's no difference between the two theories. If one's true, the other's true. So for example, look, so take this little theory again with Raleigh and Isaac and fishes and smokes. Right? Here's a different theory you could give for the same language. Suppose you say Raleigh doesn't refer to Raleigh. Raleigh refers to something quite different. The name Raleigh refers to the place that's 1 mile west of Raleigh. Okay? That's a different axiom. And the name Isaac refers to the place that's 1 mile west of Isaac. And I give the following axioms for the predicates of this little language. I say the predicate smokes applies to something just in case the person 1 mile east of that thing smokes. And the predicate fishes applies to something just in case the predicate 1 mile east of that thing fishes. Okay, so these are different axioms for Raleigh and Isaac and smokes and fishes. Right? Is there any difference between this theory and the other theory? Well, they both give you the same result. Suppose you ask, what does it take for Raleigh smokes to be true on this theory? Well, what does Raleigh refer to? Raleigh refers to the place 1 mile west of Raleigh. Well, smokes applies to something if and only if the person 1 mile east of that thing smokes. So we want to know what it takes for Raleigh smokes to be true. Well, it'll be true just in case the predicate applies to what this refers to. What this refers to is that place. And the predicate applies to that place just if the person 1 mile east of that place smokes. So who is it that is 1 mile east of that place? It is none other than Raleigh, because the place was the place 1 mile west of Raleigh. So if you go to the place that is 1 mile west of Raleigh and ask who is it that is 1 mile east of that place, it is none other than Raleigh, right? So the predicate is going to apply to that place, just in case Raleigh smokes. So Raleigh smokes will be true by this theory, if and only if Raleigh smokes. So the axiom, and should I do that again? You want me to do that for something like Isaac Fishes? You see how it's going to go for Isaac Fishes. Isaac's referring to this place 1 mile west of Isaac, and the predicate is going to apply to that place, just in case the thing 1 mile east of it fishes, so you get shunted back to good old Isaac to see whether that's Isaac Fishes, to find out whether the predicate applies to that place. Right? So Isaac Fishes will be true if and only if Isaac Fishes. So this theory has got different axioms to the first theory, but the same SP pairings get cranked out. Yeah? So is there any difference between these two theories? Davison's saying that no, there is no difference between these theories. I mean, it's like, if you go back to the Ptolemaic system of epicycles for predicting what you're going to see in the night sky, these are very complicated theories. You could have two different theories stated in terms of different sets of epicycles, as cranking out predictions as to what you're going to see in the night sky. But these theories are just convenient fictions generating predictions as to what you're going to see. So there's no real dispute between two different predictive theories using different sets of epicycles but predicting the same macroscopic observations in the night sky. Yeah? The theories are only just ways of generating these predictions. But if that's right, if Davison's right about this, then there is no fact of the matter about whether the name, I should have inverted commas around it, whether the name Raleigh refers to the person Raleigh or the place 1 mile west of Raleigh. And if it works for Raleigh and the place 1 mile west of Raleigh, well, it wasn't all that clever a trick to do this for Raleigh and the place 1 mile west of Raleigh. If I can do it like this, there are obviously going to be endlessly many different ways I could keep getting that effect, generating theories that are just variants of one another. So there's no saying what the name Raleigh really refers to. It doesn't really refer to anything. It only makes sense to talk about reference in the context of some or another arbitrary theory that cranks out the right SP pairings one way or another. But the question, what does the name Raleigh really refer to, makes no sense. It's like saying which system of epicycles is the right system of epicycles. If they're all just bits of gas for cranking out the predictions, there's no saying which one's right. None of them is right. Reference is indeterminate. As Quine put it, inscrutable. There's no saying what that sort of sign of a language really refers to. That's one way of getting at what in this view is so wrong with the Frege, Russell, Kripke, Pritschke, Fodor approach. Okay. I don't myself really see how this can be right. I think it's very powerfully put, but I think it's difficult to see how it can be right. Because this is where I want to raise the question that was raised earlier. Why is it so important to get finite axioms? Why is it so important to do this? I mean, as I said, through the 70s and 80s and still today, people attach great importance to constructing this kind of theory. But why do they care about showing how the meaning of a sentence depends on the meanings of its parts? If it's just a matter of getting some gadgets in there, some gas that will one way or another generate the right SP pairings, why bother? Why go for finiteness? Why not just say, you can just state this generally, S is true if and only if P, but what replaces P is always a translation of the sentence S. Leave it at that. Why do all this hard work of trying to figure out how the meaning of a sentence depends on the meanings of the words? And you can explain what translate means by talking about the empirical constraints in translation, like Charity. Well, I think it's kind of obvious why people don't do that. The natural idea is that people, ordinary speakers, don't learn a language one sentence at a time. That's what you do when you're using a phrasebook in a foreign country. You might just realize, I don't have any idea what any of the words means, but I know that this sentence means the same as the English sentence, help get me out of here. So you read the whole thing, right? Can you lend me $1? Your convenient sentences like that, you learn. Right? But ordinarily, when you're understanding your own language, you don't do it sentence by sentence, you do it word by word. You have a vocabulary. There's a finite string of words that you've learned, and you can understand those words in the context of any sentence where you understand all the other words. You see what I mean? The way to describe someone's linguistic repertoire is not, the way to characterize the extent and the limitations of their understanding of a language is not to give a big list of all the sentences they can do. It's to list all the words that they understand. When you're learning a language, you do it by learning words, not by some phrasebook method. Right? That's why dictionaries are helpful. Right? And when you lose your grasp of a language, which doubtless has not happened to you guys yet, but I promise you happens, when you're losing your understanding of a language, what happens is that you forget the meanings of the words you used to know. I used to know what monomers were. I used to know what the Haber process was. Yeah, there are all these things that you used to know, but now you don't understand sentences containing those words anymore. Yeah? So when you're losing your grasp of a language, you lose your grasp of a language word by word, not sentence by sentence. You lose your grasp of all the sentences containing an individual word when you lose your grasp of that word. So when we're characterizing an ordinary speaker's understanding of a language, we can't characterize it by SP pairs. We have to characterize the way an ordinary speaker understands a language by something to do with their grasp of individual words. And then you ask, now how is it that you understand the word Raleigh? And there has to be some empirical content to that. It's not just gas. Something is going on in your brain that relates to the individual word. And you ask, well, what is it that you do when you learn the meaning of the word Raleigh? Well, the meaning of the word Raleigh, you understand words like that by something like being introduced to the object. Someone says, "Whoa, Raleigh, here's Justin." Right? Something like that. I mean, that would help you with Raleigh, but it would help you with the name Justin, right? And you learn the name by being introduced to that object. You would not be taught the meaning of the name Raleigh by being shown, look, here's this place, 1 mile west of Raleigh. Right? That's not the way it works. If you said, I don't know who Justin is, can you tell me, if you don't mind using you as an example, can you tell me who Justin is? I can say, well, there's this place, right? And the predicates applying here are true if and only if the person 15 yards north of that place fish and smoke and so on. Yeah, that wouldn't help at all, just me pointing to the place. What we really want to get is an encounter with a person. That's what will tell you who Justin is. When we're explaining the name, Davidson writes as if these would do equally well. Right? There's no fact to the matter which one is right. So either would be just fine. But actually, there is some empirical difference between learning the word Raleigh by being introduced to Raleigh and learning the word Raleigh by being introduced to a place 1 mile west of Raleigh. We have to try and catch that. There has to be something about your understanding of a language that doesn't operate just at the level of sentences, that does operate at the level of words. Something we can say about your grasp of individual words. And in the face of it, what you have to do here is look at the role of perception in your understanding of individual words. And a lot of these examples, what's going on is you say, look how you learn the colour words. You don't just learn whole sentences. You learn the word red by being shown lots of examples. Perception is keyed to the predicate. This is red, that's red, that's red, and so on. This is blue, this is blue, this is blue, and so on. There's something about perception is what's anchoring, in the end, your understanding of individual words. And Davidson's theory that only talks about the empirical constraints and these SP pairings is not catching the way perception works in our understanding of individual terms of the language. Okay, this is where position kicks in. This is where position takes up, and we'll look at that next time. Okay, thanks for showing out on this exciting day. Okay.